Welcome to Gwinnett County Public Library's Meet the Author series. My name is Denise. This evening, the author is Susan Shapiro Barash. Susan is an American author of 13 nonfiction women's issue books, including Tripping the Prom Queen, Toxic Friends, and You're Grounded Forever. But first, let's go shopping, and others, and obviously the one we're talking about tonight. And that book is A Passion for More, or Break Us. Terrific cover. She writes fiction under her pen name, Susanna Marin, and her novels are Between the Tides, A Palm Beach Wife, and a Palm Beach Scandal. Susan's books, most of them, will focus on the gender divide, how women are positioned in our society and their innermost feelings about themselves, their daughters, their mothers, their sisters, their friends, wives, mother-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, rivals, colleagues, and lovers. She is a New York Times best-selling author, and you can see her writing in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, the Chicago Tribune, Elle, and Marie Claire, just to name a few. She has also appeared on television, including The Today Show, Good Morning America, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, and others. Thank you, Susan, for joining us from New York City tonight.
Thank you for having me here, Denise.
We're pleased to. Let's start I want to talk about your book. I want you to just tell us generally what it's about, and then I have some questions. I have read it. And we have it here available to our library guests. So of course you can purchase it from your favorite bookstore. Susan, tell us a bit about this book.
Well, A Passion for More is actually, this is an updated and revised edition of a 30-year study. And so the first edition of A Passion for More, Affairs That Make or Break Us, came out in 1993. When I was a very young writer, and it was my first nonfiction book. And I wrote it because I kept hearing women whispering about affairs. Like I would take the commuter train and I would hear it. And I went to a birthday lunch for two friends, and I heard it. And I wondered, excuse me, I wondered just what was going on. And was this something we were just starting to talk about? Or was it something very new in the ether, which I doubted, and in our society? And so I interviewed women all across the country, all different ages, social strata, ethnicity, race, religion, from sophisticated cities and suburbs to rural areas. And I wanted to know about their trysts and how they managed to be the good wife, the good lover, the good mother, and why women are so compelled to do it. Now, I kept the research going because for 23 years, I taught gender studies at Marymount Manhattan College in the writing department. And so this nonfiction book in particular, for every year, it came out again in the early 2000s. And then like, I think 2001 or 3. And then I realized during COVID that my research was changing and that there were more cyberspace affairs, that there were more women really longing for some opportunity they might have missed. And then the minute we were vaccinated and got out into the world, or the world opened up, affairs began. And so I was really hearing something very different in the last several years.
Wow. Yes, I did wonder, even while we went through the COVID and the isolation, I and my partner, I would often say to him, this is going to be very interesting. We've never been alone this much for this longer period of time. And I wonder how many marriages are going to be enhanced by this experience, or it's going to become a part of their downfall. and we were really pleased at how well we got along given that containment. But yeah, talk to me a little bit more about COVID and what did that do, in your opinion, to
Well,
marriages
since I've
or for
been long
marriages?
intrigued by the faces women wear versus how they truly feel,
Mm,
I think this was a very important moment for women because they were really questioning what they might have missed or what they really yearned for. And they were assessing themselves. It was almost a journey. And that's why affairs became a form of self-exploration. And I think that's really been going on the last 10 years in my research. But in the past 3 years, Denise, what women were saying is, what about that old flame? What about the guy at the water cooler? And then finding a way to reach out to that person. And also, because of spending so much time at home, you better understand what you have and don't have in your partner.
good point. That is a very good point.
Yeah.
You mentioned I couldn't help but think about the fact that I wondered if the increase in the statistics that you talk about, and I think that the statistics are fascinating. I have them here. You talk about the fact that 70% of women will engage in an affair at some point in their marriage. So how much has the internet impacted that?
Well, there's so much accessibility
Hmm.
because we also have private phones. Our cell phones are really private. And there's there's Facebook, there's Instagram,
Right.
there are ways to find almost anyone. There's LinkedIn. And so women, if compelled, can really pursue someone outside the marriage. What's so interesting is how these are convention-bound women. So it isn't as if anyone I've interviewed says that on the day that she walked down the aisle, or, if it's not a marriage, but a partnership, the day that she moved in, she wondered when she'd have her first affair. It's more that it evolves over time. And women hold the bar very high when it comes to their partners. They're looking for a lover, a best friend, a confidant, a provider, all in one. And in all fairness to the men, that's a pretty, tall task. And so in my study, so many of the women told me that the lover really provided what the husband didn't. So it's not like they're repeating the experience. They're having a very different experience with a very different kind of man.
I see. And how is it different? How do you see what is the difference between why men choose to have relationships outside of marriage and why women do? Is there a big I mean, I had always had the impression that for men, many men, it was just sexual. It was conquest, excitement. How are they similar and how are they different?
Well, I think they're very different. And I do want to say that for all of my nonfiction work, I only interview women. So I report about how men feel based on how the women reported to me. But for women, the issue is for ourselves, for our daughters, our colleagues, all of us, we live and probably will die. I'm sure we will die in a patriarchy. And in a patriarchal culture, the same advantages, expectations, and challenge, the opportunities and challenges are different. So women are so good at so many things and so multifaceted as almost a survival technique, as a way to get to where they need to be, however they can. And my impression is that women are much more facile at keeping the affair a secret, that the only time that they reveal the affair to their partner or husband is if they would like to use it as a negotiating tool in the relationship. So women are able to juggle their very busy lives, careers, children, husband, parents, friends, colleagues. And if they so desire, the affair can be incorporated into their lives.
Wow.
For men, just to answer that second part of the question.
Yes,
For
please.
men, it's always been a kind of wink, wink. Men go on business trips. Wives are told to look the other way. We assume it's simply sexual or, as you said, a conquest. And for women, it's much more about a personal journey and looking for what they don't have in their primary partnership.
That is very interesting. So how do affairs empower women? You mentioned empowerment. In fact, there's a whole chapter on, we can get into this a little later. I think you call it the 4 kinds of reasons or types of affairs. Tell us a little bit about how affairs empower a woman.
Well, they're trading in the same currency that men have always traded in. They want this experience and they go after it and they get to experience it. And again, men have for decades, centuries, been able to do that. No punishment. When we think of famous women who've had affairs and the consequences, let's just mention Anna Karenina. Thinking of Madame Bovary. Of course, those books are written by men, but in any case, we're looking at how women are positioned and judged in society. And these women are saying, I would like to have this affair. I will pursue this affair, and it is for me. And that's very empowering.
That makes sense. Talk to the audience, please, a little bit more about the other types of affairs. They were empowering affairs, sex-driven affairs, love affairs, and self-esteem affairs. I'm particularly interested in having you define this. The others seem a little bit, I can understand what you're saying, but in particular, I'm curious about self-esteem affairs. But feel free to talk about any or all of the other 3 that we just mentioned.
Yeah, we should talk about all of them. I just
Please.
want to mention one other aspect that's very notable about the empowering affair. As women earn more money, and while it's not equal pay for equal work, but as there is more parity in terms of opportunity in the workplace, that's also very empowering. And so women can really, if they choose to have a boy toy, why not? If they, because men have, as I said, always been historically able to do that. And so women are empowered in that way too, earning power in a capitalistic society. And so having a fling, if they so choose, is just another aspect of it. In terms of self-esteem affairs, this is really interesting because a lot of women turning 40 or close to 40 or the other side of 40, little children, maybe a husband watching a lot of football, they look in the mirror and say, gee, is this all there is? And, where's the romance? And why am I invisible? And why am I doing invisible work? Why, this taking care of these children, running this home, having a career often at the same time. And so the self-esteem affair is with the lover who really makes these women feel special and appreciated. And women say, oh, I feel so beautiful again. I feel that I'm heard again. So that's the self-esteem affair. The love affair is pretty self-explanatory, but I want to say that it is the most difficult of the affairs. And the way that plays out is a woman goes to a reunion, high school reunion. Woman runs into her college boyfriend. A woman walks across the room at a party and a man catches her eye in a way that she could never have predicted. And it's called a thunderbolt. And she falls for this man, and everything else was okay. There wasn't a deficit. This is truly triangulated in a way that is very emotional and often painful. And then the sex-driven affairs, again, kind of self-explanatory. But that's interesting because these women in my study, women of all ages, and as I said, disparate group of women, are saying, you know what? I don't want any emotional connection to this man. What I'm missing is the kind of sex I long for. And if this lover gets too close or wants more from me, next. And so the women are operating very much the way we assume men have operated with affairs, where they want sex and they want no other connection.
Interesting. So are you, is there a correlation then between the how many our age as we women as we age, and the number of affairs. In other words, so are women particularly vulnerable as they get older? And you talked about menopause, and they just don't feel as sexy or pretty as they used to be. Is there any way we can measure that?
There's definitely a component of that where the women are aging. And again, that falls into self-esteem affairs and they don't feel appreciated or sexy or attractive anymore. But what really was notable to me in this study, especially my recent research, is how many women over 50 and 60, 70 into their 80s are having affairs. And I think that says so much about
Wow.
how women are still searching for what they want. And, that's really notable because the trajectory of the female life until very recently, really until the workforce, but 20th century, was you're born to be a good daughter, you become a good wife, a good mother, a good grandmother if you're lucky, and that's it. And now women have so many more options, and an affair for a woman of any age, Denise, is really a viable option if she chooses.
Oh, that is absolutely fascinating. Looking back at your stats, because I really was shocked by the 70% number that you estimate. Inclusive in that 70% are the cyber affairs or emotional affairs, or when you say 70%, you mean actual?
The 70% includes emotional affairs, affairs of the mind, cyberspace affairs, a friendship. So many women will describe something as a friendship, but they are totally crossing the line in terms of the emotional connection to this man.
Okay.
And the litmus test would be, how would you feel if your husband or partner did what you're doing with another woman? Or do you feel that you're betraying a trust by what you confide in this man to this man rather than to your partner? So these all really are a part of the affair story.
That is really, really interesting. Wow. The thing I found most shocking about the book, and I hope everyone will read it. It's written in a very interesting way, I think. I mean, I've read many books, self-help books, nonfiction books, that will have the experts' opinion, and then about the topic, and then will describe patients using fake names, of course. But what I loved about what you did, Susan, was some of the chapters you have, like Dr. Jane Bloomgarten. You will have first their comments on what their thoughts are on this topic, and then followed by stories of women who have told their story that tie to that quote. I thought that was very clever.
Thank you.
I really like that. Because it wasn't just what you think. Yes, we could find that in the conclusion and your opinions, of course, in the beginning of it, but you also have very prestigious people talking about this topic. So Dr. Bertram Slaff, for example, professor of psychology at Mount Sinai, writes, in interest, in quotes, can maintain a marriage. I thought that was I thought, yeah, sure. Outside interests are good for a marriage if it's soccer, or I mean, if you're learning how to play the piano or you're joining a book club. I was shocked that he would say that in some way having an extramarital affair could help maintain a marriage. Can you explain that better? Because I'm sure that
Yes.
that's not what he meant.
Yes, what really did intrigue me from the beginning was how these affairs can really enhance the marriage. The idea that a woman is happier with herself because of the lover and therefore happier as a mother and wife.
Wow.
That the kind of boost or the experience or the way that they feel appreciated or the emotional connection is something so meaningful that it actually does help. And that These women do not want to leave their husbands. They would like to keep it going.
Wow.
For others, the lover is really a bridge. And although only 35% of the women in my study end up with their lover, about half stay in their marriage after an affair. And we're talking a real affair, not a one night stand, but a whole experience. And about half, approximately half, stay and half leave. But many of the women described the lover as a bridge, as a way to understand what they could and could not have in their marriage and in their own life. And so often they don't end up with the lover, but the lover is the conduit to the kind of life that they would like.
Okay, I can understand that. In another of the chapters, I had a question about Dr. Jane Bloomgarden that I mentioned earlier. Um, she says in your book that she, quote, recognizes a growing cultural trend away from marriage as a sacrosanct institution. So I wondered, well, what is your view of the future of marriages? What do you think this increase in affairs in the part of women tells us about the future of marriage?
Well, the idea, the fantasy of love ever after is so deeply embedded in our culture. And we have been raised on fairy tales, and that the prince will come along and our daughters and granddaughters will be told the same. And the love-based marriage is just so critical, and the wedding industry is enormous. And the stories, romance novels and Christmas movies that just came out. So we're
Yeah.
constantly fed the story that we will live happily ever after, and that a man will somehow really make everything about our lives complete, even if we feel complete on our own. And yet, the marriage stats, according to the CDC, and I was just looking at this the other day, are down. So marriage is down and divorce is down, because less marriages, less divorces. Children of boomers, where the divorce rate was about the highest ever, right, in the 80s. And curiously, that is because women had been in the workforce about 10 years and they were earning their own money and meeting different men. But 3 out of 4 divorces are still instigated by women. And women are still expecting, as I said a little while ago, a great deal from this one man. So will it really disappear, marriage? No, I think it's really here to stay. And I think that that's even reflected in my study, the latest interviews where many women say, I'd like to stay with my husband. And, and some women say, wow, the lover really showed me what I want from my husband, and now I can go back to my husband and get it. But I do think, Denise, that marriage is very important to our society and still considered a very high goal.
I talked about it. An affair is often a catalyst to leave a relationship or to renegotiate. So you're saying many women are able, if the husband finds out, or to renegotiate their marriage, or are you saying that they just may realize, as you said, wow, this I need more attention, or I need us to do more things together. Who is different? Is that what you're talking about when you say renegotiate your marriage?
Yes, there's a real departure, according to my interviewees, in how men feel today. Maybe 40 years ago, a woman was outed and she was judged harshly. Remember the Scarlet Letter? And of course, that's centuries ago. But women today are saying to men who are willing to listen, which is real progress, look, I need this from you. I learned it from my lover, but I want you. I want us to work out. And so they go from the affair, they move on together if they're both determined. And that's a very good thing. and very much a departure from a traditional past.
True, true, absolutely. So tell me, what are the telltale signs that your partner, male or female, is having an affair?
Well, the classic signs are someone is much more interested in their appearance. So weight loss, hair color, change of hairstyle. Both men and women are at the gym in a way that's much more earnest.
Wow.
Time is not accounted for. And that really is women, and again, I'll speak to women. Women are pretty facile with their time. And so if they're, if they say, look, I suddenly have a meeting tonight and, I'll be back at 9, there's no reason to really doubt it for the husband, at first, but if it becomes a pattern. And so women are very adept at taking the right steps to protect the affair and to balance it. They're very good at juggling it. And they, I did another study. One of my other nonfiction books is on why women keep secrets and lie for the cause.
Oh,
And in that study, of course, women spoke a lot about how they were able to keep the secret of the affair. And, maybe a dear friend or two knew, sometimes someone's mother or aunt knew, but for the most part, they were really able to keep it a secret. Women tell me that their husbands seem a little messier about it. And so women will sometimes say, oh, my husband came home and I just knew it. I said, are you having an affair? You're speaking differently. You just have taken an interest in a sport you never even liked, whatever it is, they're sort of caught, and women seem to be better at not being caught.
got it, got it. And I even wondered, Susan, if some of the stats are as high as they are because it's just so there's just some we're more willing to talk about it than we were before. It's in the plot lines of all of the TV shows, and the internet, the YouTube, is a piece of it that women are just more willing to speak about this than they were in the past.
I think that because I guarantee for any of my nonfiction books, I guarantee anonymity. All the identifying characteristics are changed. And the story, the experience is told accurately, but will change, the place that they live
Absolutely.
and their names and so forth. And I think that the amount of women that have responded to being interviewed shows us how prevalent affairs are and how long women have really been silent. So I think that women feel the chance to talk about it. Several women, it really has merit. And some of the women said to me, I'm talking to you because I wish I had seen this book when I started my affair.
Really?
It would have helped me, to think that you're not really alone. One interviewee told me that it was almost like being in a private club, that you having an affair, you could almost sense another woman with the same experience. So I think that that's very interesting too, because it tells us so much about the female journey, what really goes on for women in contemporary American culture.
And I would imagine sharing it with you would be similar to talking to a therapist. Even as one hears oneself talk, you begin to understand what did you, what were they looking for? What didn't they get in their marriage?
And it's a way of really, the book,
and if they should divorce, what kind of a man are they looking for?
And for me, the book is a way to see yourself and how this will, there's some aspect of many of these affairs in the book that will resonate with someone who knows someone who's having an affair or is contemplating an affair or had an affair, is having an affair. So that's why I have the 4 types, because after listening to so many different stories, they fell into these categories, if you will.
No, the types made sense to me. So we talked a little bit about the past. I did also want to ask you I want to talk a little bit about the guilt or lack thereof. That was astounding to me that the stats in the book say, for our guests who haven't had a chance to read it yet, that 90% of the people the ladies that you worked with said they had no guilt, that there was a striking absence of regret. Why do you feel like that is the case?
I feel that by the time that a traditional woman of any age, again, diverse group of women, has come to the point where they would cross this line and no longer be faithful to their partner, that the guilt is the least of it and the longing really is the most of it. And so I'm here as a reporter. I neither condemn nor condone,
Right.
but I can tell you, Denise, that I noted with so many of my interviewees that it was not about guilt. Some of them said, I feel terrible for my husband that I'm doing this, but I feel fine for myself. So really using almost a splitting mechanism, if you will, where your life as the lover is completely separate from the other parts of your life.
Okay. So you're not saying it's when I understand what you're saying. So it's not a question that they don't think it's wrong. I mean, because there's traditional right and wrong. You're not saying that they don't think that, they think this is a completely acceptable behavior for anybody married. It's okay to cheat. You're just saying personally about their situation, they've made a peace. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's very complex. I've interviewed women who are deeply religious, who say, I just can't believe I've come to this place, and yet let me tell you what it does for me. Let me explain why I'm okay despite my deep faith. And I think that's really fascinating that women are talking about it that way.
Fascinating. All right, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions from our audience. I'll read them to you. Anonymous says, you were only talking about affairs with men. Did you also explore married women having affairs with women while being married to a man? Good question.
So this study has been interviewing heterosexual women about the other man, but I will tell you that it really is interesting when that happens. And years ago, when the book first came out, I was on the Joan Rivers show, when in 1993, when she had her talk show, and one of the women that was brought on for the group of women had left her husband for a woman, and she spoke a lot about how she also longed for a different experience, and it ended up being a woman. But this book is the base is all heterosexual women.
Specific, right. I understand what you're saying. Another viewer commented that it is my personal conviction that relationships outside of marriage, whether sexual or not, can actually strengthen the marriage, because women who live out all their facets of their lives and get their desires fulfilled, and that the husband cannot provide, are happier wives. Do you agree?
So she's saying that if you are happy in the affair, the marriage thrives from that?
Yes, that's how I interpret it.
Yeah.
Happier wives or have happier husbands.
I do agree. And while it's not the case every time, I've interviewed many women who say, I am happier with myself and I am happier in my romantic life because of the lover, and I have no intention of breaking up this marriage or this family and marriage. And so it works all around. And so, yes, I agree that for some women and for other women, it's heart-wrenching and they just don't want to stay. It's like it's an awakening. And it doesn't work that way. But this woman who just asked you is actually right that it does work for some people.
One of our guests says, she even talks about the title of the book that uses the word affairs. I don't like the word affair because it implies judgment and that it is something forbidden or bad. Are you judging the women who pursue relationships outside their marriage?
I am not judging. And as I said a few moments ago, I neither condemn nor condone. This is a journalistic endeavor. I think it's a really interesting and important aspect of the female journey that such a diverse group of women have embarked on affairs while in traditional committed relationships. And the word affair is very loaded. I agree. And I think that the publisher and I kept it all these years, for this reissue too, because it really is a message. It tells us what the book is about, and book titles are always meant to be that way. So I agree, it is loaded and judgmental. And then we can say, is it more judgmental for women? And of course, based on my research, I do think that women are judged much more than men in our society.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I do know what you're talking about, that authors often speak about the fact that the publishers have a lot to say about the title of the book and the cover of the book. And I even know from yours, the first edition of this book, it had a very beautiful piece of artwork. But the cover, when the publisher and you revised it, this is pretty, I can see that this is what the title, it makes sense to me that they wanted a graphic that will jump off the shelves, and it makes it really clear what the book is about. And that's important.
Right, that the title and the title and the picture, especially today in publishing, is meant to be very explanatory. And so that's really what affairs as one of the words is about.
Yes, absolutely. All right. And you have written so many books. In fact, I have already ordered two of your other books. And one of them, the one I'm looking forward to the most, because I think most women can relate to this, or actually men as well, but on toxic friendships. So I encourage everybody to take a look at Susan's other titles, Mothers and Daughters-in-Law. You have another book about marriage itself. That's pretty fascinating. And I would like to know, what's your next book?
I have a novel coming out under my pen name, Susanna Marin, in June of this year. And I am working on a new nonfiction book and a new novel right now.
Will you tell us what the nonfiction book is about?
I can't say yet, but I will say that it is a topic that has long intrigued me. And of course, it's from the women's point of view.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. That is cool. All right. Well, if we have, check one more time to see if we have any more questions for you, or is there anything more that you'd like to say about the book and about your work?
Just that I have always been so curious as to how women navigate a path in our society and how they have agency, how it is in, as I said before, a patriarchal culture that women can achieve all that they do. And so I've long been interested in it. And that's why every book that I've written, a nonfiction book, is something that I wanted to know more about.
Wow.
And, including, you said Toxic Friends, Tripping the Prom Queen, about female rivalry, and just how women work together and how important it is that we do for one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to see a book about women in the workplace. I have noticed a drastic change in that since I began my career in the very late 70s in a male-dominated company, then worked for a company that was primarily female, and I really did not enjoy that. It
Wait,
was
so
such a different experience.
you're saying that you found it hard to work in a female company?
Correct. I found it, yeah, um,
Well, that's when
much more emotional, more difficult to negotiate, way more backstabbing and talking. Oh yeah, absolutely. My original career was in a Fortune 500 company, and it was an all-male sales force with the exception of about 2 women. And if I'm gonna stab you in the back, Denise, I'm gonna stab you in the back. I'm gonna tell you about it. There's no, there's no game playing. There's no, it was just right there. And I learned to actually really enjoy that. um, because
Well,
it takes
it's
such,
interesting that
because,
you're saying that, because when I did the research for Tripping the Prom Queen, and it's called Tripping the Prom Queen, The Truth About Women in Rivalry, I found many women saying the same thing that you're saying, which is they would rather have a male boss than a female boss. And I think that that's really unfortunate. And it reflects a society where women have not had enough pie. And so in a limited goods culture for women, we are taught that the winner takes all.
Mm.
And women aren't really mentoring. Today, I think it's better, but you're talking about a few decades
so
ago.
too.
But we really do need to improve that. Women need to support each other.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that that is my experience now. But we've come a long way from the 70s or the 80s when, I was the only woman or the only one of two in the sales force. This is it's a very different animal now, thank heavens. And women aren't, there are more of us, so we can afford to be generous. It's not you or me, one of us goes kind of thing. So I'm just saying I would love to read a book about that, women in the work environment. Not only how are they treated, how do other women treat them? And this interesting topic you mentioned about, do women prefer male bosses versus female bosses?
And how that really needs to improve. And I think it is improving. But I agree with you that the more that we mentor and the more that we make room for other women, the more that women have power.
Right. It shouldn't be about that. It's about talent, developing talent, regardless of the sex.
Right. And the more that women stand with other women, the more opportunities, and in that way, more power. So it can't be competitive. It has to be supportive, team effort.
Yes.
And that's been very hard, because when women first got to the workplace, they didn't really know that there would be so much tokenism and there wouldn't be enough opportunity for women. And without enough opportunity, it becomes competitive in a dark way instead of a healthy way.
Right. And aren't we, as little girls, or we were anyway, in past generations, taught to compete, with each other? The prettiest girl, the pageant, there is no, the handsomest boy pageant, Mr. America. I mean, yeah, there's the bodybuilding thing, but with our looks and so on.
There's no question that,
it makes sense that
in a way that circles back to affairs, because what these women are saying about the affair is, in many cases, this is for me. This is something I choose. And we live in a culture where there haven't been enough choices for women. So, the more that the world opens up to us, the better off everyone will be.
Yes, absolutely. And to have a male mentor, that also can be it would have been a slippery slope for a woman. So it's great when women step up and do this for each other, because at least we don't have to worry about falling in love with your boss or something being expected of you in terms of payback from your mentor. I would imagine that's a problem was a problem for some women.
Mentoring is so important.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you so much for being with us tonight, Susan. Again, ladies and gentlemen, a passion for more, affairs that make or break us. Susan Shapiro Barash is available now from your local bookseller or your local public library. And thank you, Susan, for coming in this evening. And we look forward to hosting you, I hope, for your next book.
Thank you. I hope so. It was really great to be here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.